Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Hans. I'm a learning experience designer that's part of Online Duke, which is part of Learning Innovation. We help instructors get up to speed with teaching online, and we often help from beginning to end, from planning and designing a course through some of the multimedia production, and all the way through delivering your course during the session. So our goals for the session today were to get you up to speed on some of the basics of teaching online. We'll provide best practices for the key elements of teaching an online course, which includes teaching class sessions online, communicating asynchronously with students, encouraging student interaction and engagement, sharing resources and content with students, and creating lecture videos. So we've centered this webinar around frequently asked questions that we get usually when we're starting out on a new online project. So we're not going to teach so much to specific tools, although we do identify some here and there if it seems likely that's the one you're probably going to be using. Particularly in this case, we know you're going to be using Zoom. However, for the most part, we're focusing more on the teaching itself. So I wanted to get us started with a common question that we get, which is how to get in all of your required contact hours when teaching online. I know that can be a concern for everyone because, you know, typically you're used to getting all your hours in because you have regularly scheduled class sessions in person. So to do the same thing online, what we recommend is having a balance of synchronous and asynchronous content. Just to define terms, just in case anyone is new to those words, by synchronous we mean live, real-time communication or interaction options. So Zoom is a great example of that. Any other sort of meeting or thing that you're all doing at the same time would be an example of a synchronous activity. On the other hand, asynchronous would be things that kind of happen over a span of time and learners have the opportunity to interact or communicate within a given window. So that could be anything from discussion forums, assessments, assignments, other perhaps group work that can be completed kind of on a gradual basis and split up. So those are kind of some examples. In addition, that would be things like your readings, any other videos that you want to share, other content that can kind of be taken in or reviewed on a learner's own schedule. So I know you guys have already talked a little bit about this, and the DKU leadership has suggested that you try to offer 1 to 2 Zoom sessions per week. And that would roughly be, you know, about an hour per session. So obviously there may be a chance that the students won't be able to attend that session live, but I think at least you guys already also have been given specific slots in which to have those sessions to help with scheduling for everyone. That's something that we do typically recommend, is that you try to have sort of a regularly scheduled time and day so that students become accustomed to it and sort of are in the mindset that, well, every week we're going to meet, you know, 1 or 2 days online, and you know, they need to be ready for that. We do recommend that you provide other opportunities in addition to the Zoom sessions for asynchronous communication and interaction. So again, that could be discussion forums, that could be other types of learning activities and assessments. In addition, trying to keep a kind of consistent flow for each week can be helpful to learners so that they kind of get a sense of what needs to be completed when. So for example, it's worth thinking about what would you have learners do before the Zoom session, during a Zoom session, and after. So, you know, you could kind of decide on a flow for the week where you might, for example, have them complete a forum assignment before the live session, Then in the live session, perhaps you're doing group discussions, group projects, other learning activities, and lectures. And then after the Zoom session, maybe you're having other assignments or assessments that they need to complete. So those are some basic recommendations for getting in more of your contact hours. So similar to what the DKU leadership has said, that's kind of like the way that you can get in other contact hours is to make sure that you're planning other asynchronous content for students to complete in addition to either attending the Zoom sessions or watching the recordings later. One other thing to know those Zoom sessions, and I think this was mentioned to you guys, is that the administration has asked that students not be penalized if they can't participate in the Zoom sessions, but that you make sure they're recorded so that they can review them later and make sure that they're up to date. So next, I want to talk just a little bit about another common question, which really you all are experiencing and already have been on Zoom a bit, so you may be starting to get more familiar with, which is how to deliver Zoom class sessions. And we're trying to put most of those practices in tonight as much as we can. So partly we wanted to just mention some technical aspects, which is it can be a good idea to find a quiet place where ideally you won't be disturbed. I still have cats that disturb me, but otherwise it's pretty quiet. We'd recommend having a headset or headphones and or a mic just to help with the audio quality and make it easier for students to hear you and hear less background noise. In addition, if you have good connectivity, we recommend using your webcam so people get to see you as well as hear you. But we understand that if you have a connection that's not quite as strong, you may need to just do audio. In addition, of course, we do also recommend encouraging or asking students to be on camera if they're comfortable, because I think as many of us know, when we're actually on camera, we tend to be a bit more accountable than when we're kind of hidden in the background. But I realize there's still a judgment call there in terms of there may be some students that for one reason or another aren't comfortable being on video, which I think would be more something for you to discuss with them individually. So we recommend having all your sessions set up ahead of time. So in the Zoom tool, either within Sakai or if you open Zoom outside of Sakai, you can go ahead and schedule all your sessions for the term. And we recommend, posting what all of those dates and times are and announcing them. Also, just to make sure you guys are aware, in addition to accessing those sessions through Sakai, they all have links. So if for some reason students are having trouble getting into the session through Sakai, which doesn't happen very often, but comes up every now and then, you can also email them the Zoom link for that particular session as another way for them to get in, because in that case, it will just go through their browser instead of through Sakai first. If possible, we recommend having an alternate host or moderator so that someone can help you, for example, as we're doing today, monitor chat. And just if someone did have technical difficulties, they could help them figure out what's wrong. But again, we realize that's not always going to be an option for you. In addition, as we mentioned, although obviously there are questions about recording in some cases, in general, it's a good practice to record the sessions so that you can share them later for students who could not attend. In terms of lecturing via Zoom, really, it could be fairly similar to a lecture you would normally do. You can share your screen or slides using that share button in the bottom middle. You could also use the whiteboard tool. As ways to make it more interactive or discussion oriented, Zoom does have a poll feature, as well as there's those basic responses. So a yes, a no, a thumbs up, things like that. As I mentioned, and you guys can see, if you look on the participants window, which if you click participants, should show you as well as everyone else. For example, you could everyone try to give me a thumbs up on there? That should be, for me, it's under more. You'll see yes, no, go slower and faster, which I'm always wondering, oh, yay. Oh, and Heather Valley needs a break, so she's got a little coffee cup. I see some thumbs up. So, you know, commonly say you have something that's more like you're trying to get the temperature of the room in a similar way to what you would do in person. You instead of, you know, trying to look at everyone's face at the same time, you could say, so has anyone ever had this come up? Or how many of you think the answer to this is yes, you know, give a thumbs up, or things like that, where it's kind of a quick way for you to make sure people are staying engaged, staying alert, and, you know, kind of helping them be part of the discussion. In addition, of course, you can do more discussion-oriented sessions. So you can encourage students to use chat to ask questions. And so it would help to pause at regular intervals just to check the chat and answer questions. You can also have students respond with audio or video responses. So in some cases, you may want them to first raise their hand if they want to speak. And so you can take an opportunity to ask them to respond. Or, you know, if you're in a kind of smaller group, it might be fine to just have them, you know, chime in when you kind of give some space for that. So those are some of the common ways to use Zoom. In addition, keep in mind there's some more advanced options. So you could do breakout rooms. So that could be used for short activities, something more problem solving based. Also, that could be used for group projects, so splitting students up into groups so that they work on or discuss where they are with a project, and kind of spend some time getting organized and planning for that project. In addition, definitely Zoom can be used for a variety of other interactions that might be useful for your course. So it could be more of a coaching, mentoring session, maybe in smaller groups. It could be in office hours or time for questions. Depending on if you're doing some sort of field work, maybe it's something more like reporting or debriefing. We definitely have a number of classes that do more hands-on activities, but online in a session. And the main thing is just planning those carefully and possibly doing some testing beforehand. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Megan to talk about lecture videos.
Yeah, lecture videos. So we're going to now talk about creating your own lecture videos. Keep in mind that creating videos is often the most time-consuming part of making an online course. And I know that that's already been echoed already from some of you that have started to record some of your own content and put that online. And then particularly for session 3, you might not have the time to create these new videos with fresh content for your course. And so just like Heather mentioned, you know, if you don't have time to create your own videos, the Coursera for DKU is an excellent option. And then there's a lot of other open sources that offer videos to share with your class. So it might be good to just see what's already out there and then decide what you would like to eventually cover, or maybe connect topics to your own videos. But if you do want to create new content and make these videos for your course, we have several options. You know, we've already talked about pre-recorded Zoom sessions or synchronous Zoom sessions that are recorded and then posted after that session. There are also voiceover narrations in PowerPoint that can be exported as an MP4 video. One thing for that, if you use a PC, any version of PowerPoint that you use is completely fine. You're going to have that functionality. If you use a Mac, only the most recent version of PowerPoint will allow you to export an MP4 video the last time I checked. So the most recent is Microsoft Office 365. That is something that is available for free to download at Duke's OIT website. But just if you're in the middle of, you know, trying to do these voiceover narrations and you're ready to export and you realize that that feature's not there, that's probably what's happening, is that you're in an older version of PowerPoint on a Mac. Another option is, a lot of you have already mentioned iPads, and that's fantastic. So iPad has a built-in screen record feature This is not automatically enabled on the iPad. This is something that you will have to go in, enable it, and then if you are interested in this, I've learned this the hard way, the microphone does not automatically enable. That's another thing that you have to go in and manually click microphone on in order for your voice to be heard. So yeah, the default microphone is off. So that's two things that you will have to automatically enable, is the built-in screen recording feature and the microphone. But then that will also save a screen recording to your camera roll as an MP4 file. So that's something that if you're interested in, just, you know, let us know and we can help you out with some of the technology pieces. So here's some best practices, and any avenue that you choose, any tech tool that you choose to create your own videos, these are some tips to get you started. Keep them as short as you can. Our recommendation, not just our, but anybody that's in online education, is to aim for less than 5 minutes per video. And I know that that is short, and I feel you right now. I get it, it's short. It's definitely an ambitious goal, but long-term, that is the recommendation. It's just that learners, they struggle to stay engaged watching a screen versus attending an in-person lecture. And so, you know, a full class lecture might be an hour and a half long, include several different ideas and concepts, but ideally an online lecture video should focus on just a single concept. And then, you know, chunking these larger lectures into short separate videos, that gives students an opportunity to digest the material at their own pace and then easily revisit those concepts that they might be struggling to grasp at a later date. I see the chat is really heating up. I'm not going to look at it yet. I'm just going to keep going. I'm excited. Okay. So in the event that you do have longer videos, entirely understandable, maybe consider including timestamps of key concepts. And so I don't know if you've seen YouTube where, you know, you can hyperlink a timestamp and then you can click it and then go to a different video. That functionality is not really available, but you could still just type in the timestamp and then have students manually click where they would like to go in that video. So that way they can still have easy access if your video is longer. That could be particularly helpful too for maybe synchronous sessions that you've recorded and then that you've uploaded at a later date. If you are using PowerPoint slides, less is always more. So using neutral color palettes with high contrast, you know, light backgrounds with dark font or vice versa, easy to read fonts. Sans serif is usually best. 28-point font is usually the smallest that you can get away with before people start squinting. And keep your text as minimal as possible as well. If you have long paragraphs, try to break those down into concise bullet points. Any text that appears on a slide should be key takeaways for your learners. Include visuals where appropriate, but be mindful of the use of animation. I'm sure that we've all seen those slides with glittery stars flying across them. Super cool, but not, it can be very distracting. So when in doubt, just keep it simple. And then also so we've talked about iPads and things like that for writing. Use caution when using annotations and writing on an iPad. You know, in many cases, it might be better to use built-in shapes or text to be more legible. And your students will likely let you know if they can't read what it is that you're trying to convey, if you are using handwritten things on slides. And then lastly, for PowerPoint, this was also mentioned on Tuesday night session, but you can turn on subtitles for VoiceOver PowerPoint to have automated captions. And this can be really helpful for non-native English speakers, but it's not always perfect. So just keep that in mind. You know, it's an excellent resource, but there might be some inconsistencies there with how the transcription comes out. And anytime that you're generating content, it's great to keep it evergreen. And so evergreen means, you know, avoiding references to dates, years, information that's specific to only this session. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, this helps make content portable and relevant from course to course or semester to semester. but also references that are to other assignments or maybe other specific tools. Those change all the time. And so the more that you can have slides that don't directly reference other things that might need to be constantly updated, the more effective your time, the more efficient the process can be.
Willie, do you want to take it away with communicating and interacting before we get to final questions?
Sure. So one of the things that's really different about working online is you lose that intimacy and you lose that ability to communicate quickly and clearly by seeing people in class. And for people in your class, even if they don't come to class, they see their friends at lunch or back at the dorm, and they say, oh yeah, that's going to change. That assignment's only due, that's been delayed a week. Don't worry about that. Or we're de-emphasizing this aspect. Well, you lose all that online. And it's lonely out there for the students, and particularly for your students, I think in these circumstances, even more so, where folks really are scattered and are dealing as best they can. So it's really, really important to develop a communication plan and be absolutely clear with the students what you expect, when you expect it, what you're going to do. And I don't know what tools y'all use. There are different tools to use, but I would say for the sake of consistency, use, and to the degree that you can, use the tools that you're already using, but just in knowing that you won't have that personal contact, you'll have to substitute. So a lot of folks don't use email anymore. I have a son in college. I send him emails all the time, and he doesn't respond because he doesn't look at his email, because they don't use email. But in teaching, email is still a powerful tool. Everybody has an assigned email address. You'll have a built-in email listserv in Sakai, and you can send attachments. It's a good way to remind folks what's going on. If you want to send longer sort of things that are allowed that would fit in, wouldn't be appropriate for instant messaging. Remember, you can use that, but for that, the announcement section in Sakai is also good. You can post a brief of what you're going to do this week with, there's a calendar function. You can post announcements about reminders to people, the major points you want them to remember for the week, just as a way to communicate and keep things clear about what your instructional intentions are going to be and the learning goals for that week. But the chat function, and I guess y'all use WeChat, is really handy. And like if you're having your synchronous session at 8 p.m. Thursday, Chinese Standard Time, on Wednesday, send out an update and say, hey, remember everybody, class tomorrow night, 8 p.m. These are the topics we're going to cover. These are the things I expect you to be prepared for. I'm going to be talking in class, or if you're working in a group, the groups are going to need to do this, or you're going to break them out into breakout rooms in a group session. Make sure, say, hey, make sure your group, you folks in groups, you've got your group assignment ready and you're ready to work as a group during the session. Just sort of make sure you let everybody know what's coming up, and to keep really to keep everybody in the loop. Those are the asynchronous types. The synchronous type, when you're in the classes, you can do it just like you do in the lecture and remind folks about things in clarification, with the understanding that not everybody's going to be in those classes, and people who miss those classes are going to have a harder time. It's not going to be as easy for them to get the information. And your semester is going to move fast once y'all get going. And really, you don't want folks to miss unless there's just really some sort of a absolute breakdown. So it's really communicate, 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 be clear, be precise, have a really good intentional plan. Zoom office hours can be good. Depends. Sometimes students will use them, sometimes they won't. Sometimes you'll only have 2 students who use them. You can also use them as a way for groups. You could set office hours for groups if you're using group work and say, I'm going to be available from 8 to 9. First 15 minutes is group A. Second 15 minutes is group B. I'll leave you all to work that out, but think about maximizing your contact potential in having office hours.